Witches have it pretty good in popular culture these days. There's barely been a supernatural teen horror romance without a Generation Hex style attractive young woman or three who has a little extra mojo to help her get by with her commitments, get on with boys or girls, and get even with her bitchy classmates, and who can also turn your eyeballs inside out and occasionally may destroy the world. In this way, the word witch has been successfully reclaimed to be a metaphor for the empowerment of young women and allowing them to punch up the same weight class as the monsters, vampires, werewolves in the world with them. But historically speaking, it hasn't been that long since the word witch was a paramount threat to women, and being accused of one was a quick route to being burned, hanged, then burned, or tied up and thrown into a lake. Witch: The Road to Lindisfarne is a tabletop story game for 46 players that takes us back to the bad old days of the 50s, where the news was full of war in Korea, conflict in the Middle East, revolution in Cuba, and two mighty nations vied for dominance on the international stage. No, wait. Which takes us back to the bad old days of 1350, when there was one and only one story in the news: which neighbor of yours had just died of the Black Death, and how many days you had left until you died of it too. Rather peeved by these turn of events and not knowing who to blame, the Daily Express having not been invented yet, the locals decided to blame those people who have long hair, bumpy chests, not much in the lunchbox department, and who are known as women. A young woman named Elouise has confessed to witchcraft and bringing on the plague, and has been condemned by the church to be taken to the sacred Isle of Lindisfarne and there be burned. Her escort, though, is not made up of a cadre of cookie-cutter mooks, but rather an odd assortment of an anxious monk, an untrustworthy guide, two knights, one disgraced, the other self-righteous, and the squire with loyalties divided between them. Which, The Road to Lindisfarne, as the name suggests, is the story of that journey, for, much like the Aeneid, Little Miss Sunshine, Apocalypse Now, and Priscilla Queen of the Desert, it is a road movie. Except at the end of this road movie, you decide whether or not one of your travelling companions will be burned for their betrayal. Actually, perhaps not so unlike Apocalypse Now then. Playing which is straightforward, and the basic gameplay will be familiar to any story gamer. You take a character each, you take it in turns to start a scene about your character, and the other players help by adding description, portraying their own characters, and any incidental characters the party encounters. Where which differs from the norm is in prescribing different kinds of scenes at different stages of the journey. Introductions, confessions, flashbacks, prophecies, which all help to vary the pace and tone and prompts players to impart information about their characters without actually having to include it in character conversation, and in strictly delineating the path of the journey. The game has a set structure from beginning to end. What actually happens in each scene is down to you and will vary massively in each game, but you will always start in London, go through Hangman's Woods and Clifftop Pass, and Elouise will always arrive in Lindisfarne and face her absolution. It could not be more of a railroad if it had a blue engine pulling Annie and Clarabelle up and down its tracks, and it is this railroad that is a key ingredient in making the game work so well. Now, some gamers would consider that a self-contradiction in today's gaming world, but the effect is tremendously liberating. We, as the players, do not need to worry about where the story is going or where the next scene will be. The game will tell us, and it will ensure we get to the end. We don't need to meta it. It allows us to stay in the heads of our characters, the developing relationships between them, and the consideration of the choice they'll have to make at the end. Because, as I said, this is fundamentally a road movie, and the central concept of a good road movie is that the outward exploration is a metaphor for the inward self-realization within each character, and the external threat is but flavor to the meat of the internal dynamics of the traveling companions. Freed from the greater demands of navigating the story, it is the personalities and desires of the characters which become key. Again, while the six characters have names and a few words to describe them, they are really nothing more than springboards by which you can personalize your character as you like. The game asks three questions about each character, and, by deciding upon the answers through play, the personalities behind each character can be wildly different each game. The monk, for example, can be played as a young and unsure novice, a firebrand witch hunter, or a raging heretic. And just as you can flesh out your characters as you like, so too can you determine how they connect to each other. You can choose your characters to be strangers, siblings, family, rivals, friends, to be craven cowards or lovable rogues. It is this variation that allows the game to be set up and played so quickly and yet be replayed so often. Your ultimate goal with your character is to work out their true feelings about their faith, about justice and rightful punishment. Why play this game? Because it pushes us to tell a story that we wouldn't unprompted create, to play a character with a markedly different mindset and approach to religion than that held by most gamers today. And for the role of Elouise, the lone female character who appears at the beginning completely deprotagonized and subject to the whims of others, but in truth, she is the core of this story. Whether her player chooses for her to be guilty or innocent of the crimes to which she has confessed, religious or heretical, puppet or puppet master, there are an enthralling variety of ways to play her, and she is one of the standout roles in story gaming today.